evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Turtle Rock Community Center. I'm Anthony Quo. I happen to be the Vice Mayor of Irvine. And as I tell the third graders who visit City Hall, you're taxpayers, and that means you are my boss. And so I work hard to deliver for this community. My folks moved to Woodbridge in 1978, so this is actually not my neighborhood. However, my family owned a Chinese restaurant across the street from UCI for about 25 years, so we drove through this neighborhood for many years. So a couple of months ago, I was at a function with one of your neighbors, and her husband doesn't talk to me too often, but he walked up to me and he said, "Fire season's coming up. What are we doing?" And I said to him, "Lots of things." And he said, "Well, are you going to tell us about them?" And I thought, good heavens, we should. And so I'm so excited, not only as the Vice Mayor, but as the Vice Chair of the Orange County Fire Authority, which is the fire service for 23 cities in Orange County, plus the county unincorporated. I'm so glad to wear those two hats to bring to you the real deal, the professionals from the Irvine Police Department and the Orange County Fire Authority, to talk about what these two agencies are doing in conjunction with one another to keep our communities safe, but also what you as residents and neighbors can do to help keep your neighborhood safe. Let me introduce now a Woodbridge resident, but a longtime Turtle Rock resident, my Chief of Staff, Janet Colclaser, in the back, as well as my friend John Park, who is the chairman of the city's Finance Commission, Chief Shane Sherwood, who is our division chief who covers all of Irvine for the Orange County Fire Authority, and Chief Michael Kent from the Irvine Police Department is here too. And so at this point, I know you're not really here to hear me, so we'll offer some time for Chief Kent to share a welcome and Chief Sherwood, and then we'll get right into it with Bobby Simmons from our Irvine Police Department's Emergency Services Office. That's not right, is it? Office of Emergency Management. We'll hear from Juan Huerta, who is one of our fire inspectors from the Fire Authority, and Casey Knapp, our open space administrator at the city. And Casey actually went to junior high. We went to junior high together, so he's an Irvine native too. So with that, we'll invite Chief Kent to share some thoughts, and then Chief Sherwood.
Good evening, everybody. Like the Vice Mayor said, my name is Michael Kent. I'm the Chief of Police for the beautiful city of Irvine. I've been very fortunate and blessed to be given this role of responsibility this past October, so I've been in this position. Sure, absolutely. Is that better? That's better. I can hear myself. You're ready to go. Perfect. I'll start over. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Kent. Like the Vice Mayor was saying, I'm the new Chief of Police here in the beautiful city of Irvine. I've been fortunate and blessed to be given this role of responsibility this past October, so I've been in it for just under a year. My career has been always with the Irvine Police Department. This is my 20th year with the department, and I've been an Irvine resident for 32 years. My family and I moved here in 1990. We've been here ever since. This is both where I go to work and where I live and raise my family as well. So it's definitely a very special place for me. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is, of course, a very important topic. I know we talk about fire season, and it's sad to say, but fire season is now pretty much year-round. We've seen significant fires impact us, not just in the Southern California area, but across the country and across the world at different times of the year, and I'm sure you've seen it. Parts of Europe are dealing with that right now, and it's impacting them tremendously. Some of those areas that are impacted weren't as well prepared as some other areas. I can tell you that we have an amazing partnership. We have an amazing fire department that we have partnered with. About 2 years ago or so, we had the Silverado fires. That was a good test for us, and not that we want to be tested, but this is what we do to prepare for emergencies like this. It definitely impacted the north end of the city, Portola area significantly, but again, because of the partnership that we have with the Orange County Fire Authority, because of the policies, procedures, protocols, and the amazing training that we have, and the support from our city leaders, we were able to safely evacuate almost 100,000 people in just a matter of hours and be able to rely on our partners with CFA to battle the fires and it not impact any of the properties. But with that said, even though that was a success, what if that was to happen again? And some people will correct me, and it's not about what if, it's when. When could that potentially happen? So thank you for being here tonight. I know this is a really important meeting you'll get to hear. I don't want to steal their thunder, but our partners from the Orange County Fire Authority are going to talk about a little bit some of the things that they have in place, but specifically our Office of Emergency Management, led by Bobby Simmons, is going to talk about some of the programs and protocols and procedures that we have in place, and also what you can do as a resident to make sure that you're contributing to that, so we're all safe in the event that we do have a significant event like a fire occur, or just a disaster in general that occurs in our city. So thank you so much. Please follow us on social media. We put a lot of good information out there, and I have to do this plug every time I get an opportunity. We are hiring. We're hiring all kinds of positions, police officers and professional staff. So if you know anybody that's interested in pursuing a career in law enforcement, please have them visit our website or follow us on social media. All kudos to the fire department, but we're kind of the cool guys in the town. So thank you so much.
Chief Kent, I say, every time you tell everybody how much you're hiring, it's working. And where I was just at, they said they lost 5 police officers to Irvine PD. So it's working. Good evening, everybody. My name is Shane Sherwood. I am the division chief that oversees the city of Irvine. Very proud to serve all of you. Bobby asked me when the last time I was in this building, and it was back when I was an engineer at Station 4 in like 2006, 2007. So it's been a little while. Glad to be back. Thank you for coming tonight. Really important topic tonight, and it seems like we can't get enough information about how we can be better prepared for the wildfires that potentially we could expect or we could experience. So thank you for Vice Mayor Quo. I call him director, I call him vice chair. He's got a lot of titles for me, but thank you for putting this on. Thank you for making this a priority. This is really important information, and my hat's off to you that you guys are all here to be a part of this. What I want to make sure is that we have Jill, who's part of the OCFA, our public education side of it, is here. Juan Huerta, who you'll hear from tonight. Please don't leave here with unanswered questions. If for some reason something slips your mind here or you think about it at home, please reach out to us. Please go to our website, ocfa.org. We are here to better, make sure that the community is best served and that you are all prepared for whether, as you heard from Chief Kent, a disaster, a wildfire. We are here to serve all of you and to make sure that you are safe. That is our priority. That is our mission, and so that is why we're here. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Bobby. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for putting this on, Vice Mayor Quo, and we'll be here for all sorts of questions, so please don't hesitate to ask. It just takes one person raising their hand, and it'll be off to the races from there. So thank you again.
All right, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well this evening, and again, just to reiterate, thank you so much for coming out to learn some very important information that we have to share tonight. I believe I was already introduced, but again, my name is Bobby Simmons. I'm the emergency manager for the city of Irvine and Irvine PD. And my role is not to command troops in the field with lights and sirens or tell fire engines to put the wet stuff on the red stuff. My stuff is really all coordination, pre-incident, also during the incident, but I'm not in the field. I am in what we call the Emergency Operations Center, and that is a center where we come together to be able to coordinate what information we need to push out to our residents, to the community, how we message all of that information so it makes sense to everybody during a time of panic and evacuation, how we coordinate resources, how we collaborate with other partner agencies that are joining in on the fight, whether it's a fire or responding to a flooding or hazmat incident. So anyway, we're gonna get into all that tonight, and we're really gonna give you kind of a lot, again, of information and a little bit of everything that touches wildfire. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So just a couple quick slides on emergency management. You know, emergency management is, take this off. Can you hear me okay? Does that sound good? Okay. Emergency management is not as well known or as well of an established profession as cops or law enforcement or firefighting or EMS, right? EMTs. We're still a kind of defining ourselves organization in a field, but essentially what we do is we prepare, we respond, we recover, and we mitigate against all hazards. All hazards. So again, in the natural realm, fire, flood, earthquake, landslide, you name it, but also in the intentionally caused realm. So acts of terrorism, violent intruder, technological disasters or infrastructure failure, power outages, etc. So we are planning for all of these things, and I'm going to kind of go a little bit into some of our responses over the past couple years here in Irvine. So the slide that you'll see up right now behind me, top picture is a picture of what we call the Emergency Operations Center, or EOC. This is, again, that center I spoke about before, where really all of the big decisions are taking place, where the coordination is taking place, so that we can respond appropriately to the needs of the community during a COVID-19 pandemic, during a Silverado wildfire, during a major power outage that affected about 30,000 customers in Irvine just a couple years ago. So this is the EOC. This is where me and my staff and a number of other city responders gather to be able to effectively and timely deliver services to the community. So I always have two slides in here on our two very, very important disaster volunteer organizations. So we all know volunteers really make the world go round, right? Would you agree with that? Volunteers are wonderful. In our world of emergency preparedness, it's critical that we also have disasters. And we're fortunate to have two specific groups that provide very kind of different services to the police department, to the city, to the residents of Irvine on its worst day. Okay, so the first one you'll see up here, the Irvine Disaster Emergency Communications Team, otherwise known as IDEC. This is a group of about 60 to 70 highly experienced, highly trained amateur radio operators that can really supplement communications for our police department, for our city, when all the cell phone towers go down and all the radio towers are down. And if you're thinking big scenario, we're talking the Katrinas, we're talking the Superstorm Sandys, like those major incidents where everything is down. They are the ones, they are going to be our lifeline to emergency communications. And actually, I see a few of them in the room tonight, so I appreciate you being here to support. The second group is what we call the Community Emergency Response Team. Raise your hand if you've heard of CERT before. Okay, so maybe a quarter of the room, terrific. Our folks over here will share a lot more about this program after the presentation. Please go over and speak with them if you haven't already. But this is free training, folks. This is free disaster preparedness and response training that you can receive as a resident or a business owner of Irvine to take through our police departments, and it's a partnership between the Irvine PD and the Orange County Fire Authority. It's 28 hours of disaster preparedness training. We talk about, we train you on how to lift heavy objects off of people with really household items. We teach fire extinguisher, we teach light search and rescue, disaster psychology, and a whole bunch of other really great skills. And then, once you go through the class, you have the opportunity to remain as a volunteer for us that we call upon for both disaster and non-disaster time. So We've trained nearly 3,000 members of the community over the program's approximately 17-year existence. So it's pretty incredible. Again, if you have questions or you think it might be something that you want to take, please talk to these folks in the black polos when we're done here. Okay, and then just a quick slide on mutual aid. What is mutual aid? Well, in Orange County, we have an incredible system that we use regularly, for wildfires or incidents where police departments need more cops because they don't have enough cops on duty to deal with whatever it is. It might be a social unrest. It might be, something else where we can easily get additional county partners in fire and law to come to assistance if we are kind of outmanned or outgunned by whatever the threat is, right? Again, wildfire, flooding, whatever. And then the mutual aid system continues to go up from there. So we can go to the county, we can call upon the state, we can even get as high as like we did during Silverado. We called out federal resources to come out and support. I think through our mutual aid system, we had about 56 different fire departments fighting the Silverado fire, protecting Irvine homes. So it's incredible. They can mobilize quickly, and I think we do a pretty good job here in Orange County with mutual aid. Okay, so just real quickly, want to touch on the focus tonight. This is a wildfire town hall meeting. We do a lot of other presentations that are a little more, well-rounded. We talk about earthquakes. We talk about other threats. Tonight the focus is on wildfire, and the reason for that is, we're here. It's getting hotter outside. Probably August, September, we're going to start getting more of those Santa Ana wind events, right? Low humidity. So it's really important that we address this tonight. But I just wanted for you to see this slide because we are susceptible to a number of different hazards here in Irvine in addition to wildfire. So you see earthquake. We know that everywhere in Southern California is kind of earthquake country. Most of us have heard Dr. Lucy Jones talk about, the statistical probability of when we're going to get the next 7.0 on the San Andreas Fault. Flooding, we've had flooding events in Irvine. Thankfully, they're nothing that, typically you witness on the news from hurricanes and other weather events, but we have had flooding issues. Power outage, I referenced that just a couple years ago. That was a pretty significant response. Taking out power to John Wayne, they had to redirect flights, and it impacted, again, about 30,000 customers in our city. I'm not going to go through the comprehensive list. If you're curious and you just want to know, well, I live in this address, I'd really be curious to know, am I in a liquefaction zone from an earthquake or landslide potential, or where do I land in the wildfire risk? We'll probably mention this a few times tonight, but I would write this down or take a snapshot of it when it comes up. But if you go to our website, which is cityofirvine.org, thank you. I had a moment there. cityofirvine.org/prepare. This is where everything that we're going to talk about tonight, at least, on the city side, OCFA has a website as well that they will share. You'll be able to find all of our resources on this page, and one of those is our hazard mitigation plan. I'll warn you, got to really be into reading and probably wide awake when you open it up. It's not the most exciting document, but it is a very thorough and comprehensive assessment that took us about 2 years of a process of going through to really assess the risks here in Irvine of about 25 different disaster scenarios, what the likelihood of those scenarios are, who's most impacted, and how do we mitigate against those and the impact caused to the community. So again, please feel free to look that up on the website, as well as any number of the resources that we'll be sharing tonight. Again, so we're talking about wildfire tonight, right? How many of you live south of the 405? Raise your hand. I would suspect us since we're at Turtle Rock Community Center. Okay, terrific. Does anybody in here, did anybody drive here from north of the 5? Raise your hand. Okay, all right, terrific. So our main risk to the city, as you probably know, is on the north end and the south end. Casey Nat, who is our open space administrator and manages the land, both on the north and south end, he's gonna kind of get into where that land is, its risks, all that stuff. I just wanted to show just kind of a quick map. This is a CAL FIRE fire severity rating that really kind of gauges the darker the red, higher severity for wildfire, and then all the way kind of lighter to yellow, which is kind of on the lower risk, but still a risk. So as you can see, Turtle Rock is really just surrounded by varying degrees of wildfire severity risk. Okay, so just real quick, a couple recent, I'll say recent, going back a couple years now, wildfires that we've had. So in 2017, we had Canyon 2 fire. Now that did not impact Irvine, right? It burned up from the 91, over the hill, came down to the 241, and we were activated, we were ready in our EOC. Thankfully, it never jumped the 241, and that was a bad fire. I mean, it destroyed, I think about, 55 structures damaged, 25 destroyed, evacuations from Orange, Anaheim Hills, Tustin. So, major event did not touch Irvine, thankfully. And then the next year, about a year later, almost a year later, we had the Aliso fire, right? And so this is the one that burned pretty much Laguna Beach and Aliso Viejo. Thankfully, we did not lose structures in this one, but again, this moved very fast. It was during one of the, what we call red flag warnings or Santa Ana wind events. And again, this is one that did not touch Irvine on the south end. However, it could have. Now I'm gonna pause for a moment. Was anybody in this room affected by the 93 or 94 Laguna Beach fire?
93.
Wow, I was not expecting that many hands. Okay, so that makes sense why you're here tonight. And my guess would be that wildfire has been on all of your minds since then, right? Which we're going on about almost 30 years now.
Speaking of which, sir, I think everybody would like to know what we might have in mind for evacuation of our neighborhood. It was a real disaster the last time. Ridgeline was packed up, back-to-back cars. I stayed behind because I was not going to go anywhere. So if you'd address that, I think everybody appreciate all the exit routes out of Turtle Rock, whether they're just going to be 2-lane roads or you're going to make better access for everybody. Thank you.
Great question, and yes, we absolutely will. We have a section just on evacuation alone. Yep. All right, and then kind of last kind of case scenario, obviously Silverado wildfire. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This is your city. You know what happened. I trust you know what happened. Major wildfire kicked off early Monday morning, October 26th, and it just went. And it could have been really bad. And a lot of us were worried it was going to be really bad. But again, because of that quick mutual aid system for fire resources, because of the quick deployment of officers into the field to assist with evacuations and traffic control, we were able to thankfully come out of this incident without losing a single family structure in the city. So, this leads us to wildfire planning, and you'll see on the screen, sir, our emergency operations plan, Annex 8, which is all focused on evacuation. So you'll see the date September 2019. This actually went before City Council in December of 2019. And 10 months later, well, I should back up, we spent the entire 2019 focused on this. I mean, almost every meeting we had that year was focused on wildfire evacuation in your city. I mean, and it's not like this process wasn't taking place prior to this, but we have been seeing the Tubbs Fire in Sonoma County. We have been seeing all of these major fires where folks did not get out, and we said, not in Irvine, not us, not here, not our folks. So we dedicated a lot of resources from all city departments to really effectively plan this out. And again, 10 months after this went to city council, we had the Silverado fire, and pretty much every element of this plan went into effect and was implemented that morning, thankfully. So some of the topics that you'll find in this plan, which again is posted on cityofirvine.org/prepare, is evacuation zones. We're going to talk about that in a few slides. How we repopulate, traffic management, in the field, law enforcement directing traffic, how we send emergency alerts. Now I know most of you were on the south end, but being on the south end, did any of you receive those emergency alerts that we were pushing out? Yeah? Okay. Sometimes just the way the cell phone towers are, it overshoots by sometimes a block, sometimes by 5 miles. It really depends. But we're going to talk about what we've done to prepare to alert our residents. Mutual aid talked about that, evacuation of animals and pets, and how pet shelters factor into our planning for care and reception centers. And then ultimately access control and security. When we evacuated everybody from Silverado, we kept officers at different checkpoints, round the clock, officers driving the streets, making sure we weren't having those, crimes of opportunity of folks coming into our city and looting the homes that had been evacuated. It's at this point in time that I'm going to pause my presentation and introduce again Casey Nat. He is our open space administrator. He is responsible for managing all of our open space. If it's dirt on the north and the south end, it's his. And so he's a great planning partner along with OCFA, and we just really want you to better understand the open space before we jump back into some of the wildfire information. So Casey.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Casey Nat. I was raised in Woodbridge. I too was here for the '93 Laguna fire, and the one thing I remember just growing up in Irvine are the October Santa Ana winds. It was one of those items that you could never forget within the wind corridor of where Irvine sits. And unfortunately that day, it happened to have a black cloud, and it really opened up my eyes just as a child of what the actual threats we face within a wildland element. As I grew up through the Irvine school system, I went to Woodbridge High School. I was fortunate enough to go to Lakeside Middle School with Vice Mayor Quo, and I really started to learn more about land management, landscape, and golf. I was the golf captain at Woodbridge High School. As I graduated, I said, well, I need to do something that's golf related and landscape related, so I became a golf course superintendent. It gave me great fortune to work out in the Beaumont area where we have lots of wildfires. At that time, I became a volunteer reserve firefighter with Riverside County Fire, and I spent 18 years, and I'm currently a reserve engineer with Riverside County Fire. It gives me great pleasure and honor to utilize the knowledge and skills that I've ascertained throughout my reserve career here in the city of Irvine to assist to manage our vast open space, which not only provides such economical benefits and eco-benefits, but great land that can cherish recreational activities and everything else that we truly enjoy in 1/3 of the city here in the city of Irvine. So without ado, here is a great picture of our open space, and why do we have open space? Why do we have the items that we are here to discuss today? Well, a lot of it had to do with the great 1998 Irvine Open Space ballot initiative that was processed and approved through the great residents of the city of Irvine. The Irvine company set aside quite a few acres for us to enjoy in perpetuity of the land, and here we are. With that, the wildlife and regulatory agencies came together and says, thank you, this is great for your ecosystems, but let's put together a manageable process. That way you don't have to come to the wildlife agencies every time that you enhance an area. So they put these regulatory documents in 1996, which the city is signatory to, that says here are the stipulations of the land that you get to utilize within the third of the city. With that said, we had to create a management plan of how we're going to utilize the land and protect that land for the life of this document. And with that, we also have a community wildfire protection plan, which is a stipulation of that NCCP document. That's the most important component of tonight's discussion, is how we manage the land in order to have sustainable ecosystem benefits, social benefits, and risk mitigation measures. Our open space program is part of the Irvine Forestry and Wildfire Management Program. It's one of the true programs that I take great pride in leading the city into managing our land. There's many components to it, but one item are discussion points and briefings such as this that really incorporate the residents and to showcase all the items that we're truly doing to manage our land for futures to come. One of the safe recreational opportunities that we provide is managing the trail systems and access programs of such land. A lot of the components is because we have a third of the city set aside as a preserve. We want to be able to manage it accordingly and really restrict access to many of those areas so we can preserve the ecosystem benefits and the wildlife that actually sustain their habitat within those areas. Another item we like to do is maximize the ecological benefits of such land, and we do that through early detection of invasive plants, diseases, and pests. We want to maintain the coastal sage scrub intact the best we possibly can, because that is the native habitat that was there for decades. We don't want invasive weeds to take over, which changes the fire spread components. So we want to ensure if we have early detection of invasive weeds, we want to attack and mitigate those as rapidly as we possibly can. And of course, we look at a lot of fire spread intensity. That's the one thing in the triangle that we'll go over in a minute that we can try to manage. We can't really manage the land topographic features or the weather, but we can manage the vegetation. So we're really looking into what the fire spread management program looks like and where we can really institute mitigation measures that will sustain optimal opportunities for success. So we ask ourselves, where is our open space? It's a third of the city. In the southern sector, which is where we're at now, anything south of the 405, we have around 5,000 acres. And we have two types of open space. We have protected preserve, that's under that regulatory document with the wildlife agencies, and then we have conservation easements that is not under the regulatory agency's purview, but we still manage them the same because we want all of our land to provide the same economic and ecosystem benefits in perpetuity of that land. In the northern section, we have right around 1,700 acres, and we have more to come as the Irvine company starts to fulfill their building permits. We have additional acreage that will be incorporated into the Irvine Open Space Plan. Within our resource, within our open space, is recreation. Recreation is a key part to have a great sustainable life. So we have 32 miles of trails. When we first accepted the first few areas, which was the Palmer Canyon Cattle Camp, it was only 300 acres with one single trail that went up to the 73 and back. Over time, we were able to incorporate over 32 miles of trails, both single track, double track, and we have a few utility/fire access roads that really incorporate a sustainable trail system within the regional trail system itself. The main components of tonight and the main thing that we constantly do in the Irvine Forestry and Wildland Management Program is we analyze fire spread models. We look at potential ignition sites that could be a roadside start, it could be somewhere in the open space, but we run hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of actual fire spread models in collaboration with OCFA, and we look at the potential of that fire spread, where it may go, where it's gone, we look at fire history, and one thing about fire spread models, and this is the same from a lot of the world-renowned fire behavior analysts, is all models are wrong. Some are useful. Because in fire spread, we've seen so many changes throughout the last 10 years or so that a lot of these computing systems are only as good as their inputs, but their outputs aren't what exactly is taking place on the ground. So we utilize the models as a foundation in order to analyze future potential of fire spread growth with all the components and all the inputs for every output. It's a complex system, but we look at every possible scenario that we can in order to provide the outcome for traffic management, for evac plans, and everything else. Weather patterns. That's probably the number one influencing factor of fire spread right now is weather patterns. We're looking at the long range form, we're looking at the season outputs, and we have a great working relationship with the National Weather Service. We have a local meteorologist that we work with, and we have really good data sets that we look at, and we have them help us interpret what they actually mean. And then the last, we look at fuel moisture. Orange County Fire Authority takes fuel moisture levels on a monthly basis, and that's pretty much the indicator of how hot a fire may burn or how much fire can spread through the actual measurement of the fuel moisture, which is vegetation moisture, which is how much moisture is in the leaf of that vegetation. So with all that data set and all the analysis, we have to put together a plan. The number one thing we try to do is reduce fire intensity. And the only way we can really try to reduce fire intensity is through strategic vegetation thinning. We look at our vegetation management plan throughout all the areas that we can possibly be successful. And our vegetation management plan typically takes place anywhere between the wildland interface and a structure. So we strategically modify the arrangement of vegetation by thinning and removing plant material, minimizing fire spread. Because if you look at the properties of combustion of the fire triangle, that's the consumption of the fuel. So we try to minimize that fuel load, and the amount of vegetation that's actually burning should in fact minimize the intensity and should maximize the opportunities for suppression. A lot of the fuel breaks that we manage on an annual basis are actually here in Turtle Rock, a lot of the interior slopes and exterior slopes. And so we put a lot of concentration on strategic thinning throughout all of the parameters within Turtle Rock, within the east end of the city and some of the north end of the city, but a majority of the interior slopes are here in Turtle Rock. So we spend a lot of time strategically thinning vegetation and monitoring different impacts it may have and how we can maximize opportunities to really reduce our risk. Through that, we utilize in collaboration with the Orange County Fire Authority hand crews. These are the same hand crews. They're a Type 1 crew, the most sophisticated hand crew that you can imagine. They're the same crew that will respond to that fire. So we utilize their knowledge and their skill set to really help us maximize those opportunities to reduce our risk by reducing that vegetation. So it's a great asset for the city to have it in partnership with Orange County Fire Authority. So if you may see them out there time to time again, make sure you give them a little, hey, how you doing? They really appreciate the recognition to us to help us maintain that safe buffer between any potential risk. And we also utilize heavy equipment where applicable to get those thick fuels that we can't really get with the hand crews. And one of the favorites. Our grazing operation, we started a little history about the grazing in the city of Irvine. The Irvine company utilized cattle for grazing over 100 years. Once the parcels of open space were essentially going to be turned over to the city, they stopped their grazing operation in 2002. I remember as a kid always going to Quail Hill and seeing all the grazing operation every year, and I knew it was spring. So we're utilizing goats in a strategic manner. They are great for really taking down that vegetation to that 1-inch layer, but they're subtle and they really have a low impact on the land because they don't pull the turf out and all the vegetation out of the ground. We utilize our first pilot program, we utilize sheep and goats. And what we noted with sheep, they have more of a toughing pull. And we don't want to create more voids for invasive seed heads in order to spread that invasive seed. So we're going to always analyze our areas of grazing. What is the prescription? What are we trying to accomplish? And we're going to bring back goats once in a while when the prescription needs to be met through this type of vegetation management. And one of the last things is, as much as we analyze fire spread, as much as we try to reduce our fuels, as much as we manage our land through maximizing our opportunities to reduce our liabilities and our risks, we really have to look at what actually draws fire. What is the number one component of fire spread within our Turtle Rock area? That's going to be ember cast. Ember cast are small firebrands that essentially go aloft into the wind. They are thrown in front of the flaming front, and that's what causes additional spot fires to start. We have a great partner that's really going to touch on ember management and what you can do as residents to really harden your home. So please pay close attention to what Mr. Juan Cuarto is going to tell you, because it's super integral to prepare your home for any type of ember cast that may occur if a fire ever does occur within the Turtle Rock area. So once again, if you have any questions, my name is Casey Nat, Open Space Administrator, and I know we'll address questions after his presentation.
Thank you, Bree. What a great turnout. Again, everyone being here is a testament to how important this topic is, and for everyone to be out here, I think it really shows how important this topic is. Again, my name is Juan Huerta. I'm a Senior Fire Prevention Specialist at OCFA. My main duties are to actually perform what are called fuel modification plan reviews. What I'm looking at is these new developments that are getting built throughout the city. The fuel modification plan may be conditioned at the time of development, meaning that the type of vegetation around the community may be restricted as far as the plant palette and the spacing goes. The other thing that I do is I perform defensible space inspections, meaning that we go out and we take a look at the vegetation in and around homes. Currently, in our community wildfire mitigation section, we're doing roughly, I would say, a little over 20,000 home inspections throughout our area of jurisdiction. We do defensible space and fuel modification inspections. That's both in the state responsibility area and local responsibility area. The photos that you see behind me, that's actually a community in Irvine. So that was a community in Irvine that was built with a fuel modification plan. That photo on the top right there. So it really shows the effectiveness of a fuel modification. The area that was unmaintained vegetation burned right up to the irrigated, planted vegetation and stopped. And that's in the absence of any type of intervention. Those homes were also built to the highest level of standard of the building code, meaning that they were built with the to mitigate the potential from direct and radiant heat and also from embers. Again, just like Casey mentioned, the number one reason we lose homes isn't the direct flame and the radiant heat. It's actually embers getting inside the home. It's embers that are landing in the open eaves, things like that. What you see up there is just some photos of the coastal fire. I think this is the fire that's really fresh in everybody's head. This is one that happened in May 11th of this year. Unfortunately, we lost 20 homes and damaged another 11 homes. It's a situation where that community had good fuel modification, maintenance, and unfortunately the embers are the cause, and really that just some of those homes, just the embers getting inside the attic space, landing in the roof. What I didn't bring is another slide, but we had the Emerald Fire that happened in February, and it kind of touches on what Chief Kent mentioned, is this fire season isn't isolated to just these October Santa Ana wind events. It truly is something that we need to plan for year-round. Now, what we're focusing on today is what homeowners can do to help prepare their homes. We're going to talk about the ready, and then we're going to get into the set and the go. But when we're talking about the ready, we're talking about home hardening and what each homeowner can do to help prepare their home in the event of a wildfire. Some of the things that are susceptible in and around your home is really the vegetation, but we'll get into that in a second. but it's also the retrofits to your home. I think in some of the communities here in Turtle Rock are a little bit older, so it may not be built to the highest standards. So what we can talk about are certain things that you can do as a homeowner to help harden your home and reduce the impact of embers. So we're talking about the roofs and gutters, we're talking about eaves, we're talking about vents, windows, exterior walls, decks, and patio covers, and it's just, again, focusing on being ember aware. The biggest push that we're really focusing on is the immediate zone, which is the first 5 feet around your home. This is something that I believe most homeowners can actually regulate. I know a lot of folks live in HOAs, and HOAs may have responsibility in some common areas, but really the first 5 feet is really what we're focusing on. Some of the things that we're looking to avoid and we're really trying to focus on is not using any organic mulch within that first 5 feet. The reason is that with our organic mulch, it's really ember receptive. It's dry, and it really has the ability to ignite from those embers. We're also looking to keep vegetation away from the structure, potentially 5 feet away from windows and anything combustible. Avoid placing and storing any combustible materials near and around the home. We're talking about patio furniture. We're talking about anything that's combustible, storage, shelves, things of that nature. And then not really having any combustible construction, any wood fencing that's attached to the home, things like that. Some safer alternatives include hardscape, gravel, pavers, and concrete around the home in lieu of mulch. Obviously, again, like I said, we understand that you guys, in most cases, there are HOAs, so they may have some restrictions, so you will want to go to your CCNRs to see if there is any kind of restriction. We are pushing low-growing, fire-resistant plants, less than 2 feet, really pushing succulent material in that first 5 feet. Again, we talked about relocating combustible materials away from the home, and then also using non-combustible construction for your patio covers, your decks, and your balconies that are around the home. To kind of touch on that home construction again, depending on where you're located, I can definitely provide some information after the presentation as far as where you can access these hazard maps. But the state is the one that publishes these fire hazard severity zones, and kind of what Bobby talked about. There are 3 different zones. There's a very high, a high, and a moderate. Depending on where you're located, there may be some restrictions as far as what these unenclosed accessory structures and what they need to be constructed of. So just to keep that in mind. We talked about the ready, which again, I'll be in the back after the presentation. If anybody has any questions, I can definitely help you out with that. But now we get into the set, and that's creating a family plan. Identifying several escape routes out of your home in the community. Identifying assembly and reunification points. Again, if you've got family members who are at work, who are at school, having a plan as far as if they're not able to get back in the community because of evacuation orders, have a place where you guys can meet. Assembling an emergency kit and go bags. We have information as far as what you should be putting in that go bag, whether it's medication, actually hard cash in case it's some other emergency other than the wildfires. Having enough supplies for potentially 3 days, things of that nature. And now, again, we get into the fire approaching. If you feel safe enough and you have enough time, gather those flammable items from the exterior of the house, and either put them inside or put them as far away from the home as possible. You can connect a garden hose to your taps, but do not leave the water running. Again, you can patrol your property if you feel safe, and extinguish any kind of small fires that could potentially ignite in and around your home. Just to touch on the defensible space around your home, many folks think it's actually to protect the home from the oncoming wildfire, but really it's to provide our firefighters enough defensible space to protect the home and provide that structure defense. When we talk about the set again inside the home, we're talking about closing all windows and doors, removing any flammable window coverings, moving furniture away from the windows and doors, and shutting off the air conditioning. Now the big thing is leaving before you're told. You may get an evacuation warning before you get the evacuation order. It's always good to plan ahead and beat the rush. You want to, utilize your practice evacuation route. It's great to have that evacuation route, it's great to have that evacuation plan, but you want to exercise it a few times a year, just to make sure that you're planning for it. If there's any kind of potential hiccups or problems with that evacuation route, it's better to exercise it before an emergency than trying to do it in an emergency in a high-stress situation. Again, you want to take your kit and valuables, but the key thing is to not wait. You don't want to get caught in a fire with smoke or road congestion. You know, that's a big thing with traffic, but you also have to take into consideration, you don't want to slow our response. So you don't want to slow fire, you don't want to slow police having to actually respond to the event. You don't want to endanger yourself, and again, our first responders, and you just want to consider what you're going to wear when you evacuate. So OCFA provides this service free of charge to the community. We offer a home assessment where we have a tool online that you can do with a tablet or a smartphone, but also you can request an inspector to come out to your property and perform a assessment. We'll take a look at the vegetation and the construction around your home and provide you a report at the end. You can go to our website to request that home assessment. But again, I'll be in the back if anybody has any questions. You know, I want to take this time to thank all of you for being here, and for Casey, Bobby, and Vice Mayor Quo for putting this together and allowing us to be present and hopefully provide this information for you. Thank you.
I'm back. All right. We're going to jump into a few really important topics, and I think these topics are really going to hit on some of the questions a lot of you came here to get answered, honestly. So we're going to start with emergency alerts and alert and warning. This is a topic that I would say is among maybe the top 2 or 3 biggest topics in the field of emergency management, and it has been really ever since I referenced the Tubbs fire up in Sonoma County. That, along with many fires that followed, some in NorCal, some in Southern California, Thomas Fire, Santa Barbara, Camp Fire up in Butte County, there were challenges in effective alerting to residents, and as a result, there were deaths. I'm gonna be honest. It is not, well, I'll say this, it is a challenging thing when a fire is moving that fast and it breaks in the middle of the night, and everybody's spun up trying to get resources going in the field, to effectively alert and warn. So what we have done, we have spent, again, in addition to, I referenced almost every meeting in 2019 had a focus on wildfire evacuation. A lot of that was combined with how do we effectively alert? How do we get those alerts out quick enough for our residents to get their go bag, get in their car, and leave? So I'm going to talk about what a few of those systems are. So the first is Alert OC. How many of you in here are signed up on Alert OC? Show of hands. Okay, terrific. So about a quarter. Let's try to bump that number up to 100% of everybody in this room by tonight. When you go to bed, let's get signed up for Alert OC. We have handouts over there at the table. Please grab them before you leave if you haven't gotten one already. But I'm just going to talk real briefly about it right now. Alert OC is our county's mass notification system, otherwise known as reverse 911. So instead of you calling 911 for help, it's 911 calling you with important information about whether we need you to shelter in place and close the doors and the windows, or whether we need you to get in your car and leave and evacuate. So it's our countywide regional mass notification system that we have used. We've used it in multiple disasters. We sent out countless messages during the Silverado. Every time we had to evacuate a new zone, a new area of the community, we would push these alerts out. And the way it works is you can receive the alert by text or by voice call directly to your cell phone if you are signed up, again, at alertoc.com. How many of you have a traditional landline still? Terrific. If you do, we actually don't need you to sign up because we have that data from the phone company. Okay, so if you're only looking to get an alert on your home phone, or that's the only phone you have, we have that information. If you have a cell phone, and anybody in here with a cell phone, I would again strongly urge you to sign up so you can get those messages on your phone. So if you are not home when the fire breaks out or when the whatever that it is occurs, you're in another part of the county, the state, you're out of town on vacation, but maybe you have pets at home and your neighbor is, taking care of the pets or watering the grass or, whatever it is, you will still get alert. You could be in Europe and you will get alerted if you have registered on this notification system that something is going on at your address, right? And then you can make your emergency notifications for them to, grab your dog or your cat or grab a valuable item in the house before they evacuate if that's the message. So that's Alert OC. And what's great is when you go on and you create a profile, you can sign up, be in and out in less than 5 minutes. If you live in Irvine, but you work in Huntington Beach, and your grandkids live in South County somewhere, you can sign up to receive notifications at different addresses throughout the county. So again, that's part of being informed, taking an active step to receive that emergency information when it goes out. We had a lot of people call us during Silverado, hey, my neighbor got this message from Alert OC, I didn't get it, why not? We said, well, did you sign up on Alert OC? Well, no, I don't even know what that is. Okay, great, go to alertoc.org. This is where you're gonna get updates for the remainder of the Silverado fire. The second system I wanna mention and highlight is what's known as wireless emergency alerts, otherwise known as, we call them WIAs. We have an acronym for everything. And so WIAs function in the same manner as an Amber Alert. So you've got the white Toyota driving southbound on the 405, license plate 123XYZ, right? And of course you've gotten that at 3 a.m. in the morning when you didn't see a white Toyota going down the 405. That is the same system that is sent out by CHP for, those, typically they're for child abduction incidents, but we use them and we have signed into a direct agreement between Irvine and FEMA to be able to use that system and that infrastructure of the cell phone towers to push those messages. And it differs from Alert OC in that there's no pre-registration required. If you have a phone that was made anytime in the last 20 years, it's gonna get the alert. And it's for real time only. So we literally will draw a box or a circle, polygon, say this is the threatened area that needs to be evacuated. We type in the message, we send it. It will go to every cell phone pinging off of a cell phone tower within that polygon, that circle, that square, whatever the shape is. So it's real-time alerts. If we send it out, an hour later you didn't get it because you weren't inside there, but now you're driving home or you're driving through the area it is issued, your phone will immediately get the message. So anyway, that was widely used during Silverado as well. Another tool that we have in our emergency notification toolbelt is our emergency web page. So this page received over 3.2 million clicks during Silverado, and a lot of that had to do with our partners in the media that have hundreds of thousands of followers who are tweeting and sharing it on Facebook. So this is really the website that is designed to not go down. It can withstand, again, over 3 days, over 3 million people visited the website, not a second of website congestion downtime. That's incredible, and that was something that was proactively thought about before Silverado that went into this comprehensive wildfire evacuation plan. Is we look at a lot of lessons learned out there. I read every after action report from every major fire where there's known failures to see, does that apply to Irvine? And if so, have we already identified a remedy? And if not, let's get started on it. That's the attitude that me and all my staff and all my partners in the city have on this. So, one of the things that kept coming up is these fires again would go off, alerts go out, and then everybody gets the alert, but they want to vet the information. Where do you go? You go to the official source, you go to IPD homepage of City of Irvine, and if you haven't pre-planned for that excessive kind of inundation of people coming to your website, it just crashes, and it says, you get that system error notification. So anyway, we didn't get that. We were glad that we had that in place. Social media, again, the chief mentioned it earlier. I know not everybody's on social media, to be honest. I'm not a big social media guy, but I have accounts, literally, and I'm an emergency manager, so I should be in the know. I'm not always, especially when it's not my city, but I still want to know what's going on in my neighboring cities, right? Because it could come into Irvine. I have social media accounts just to follow those agencies, get those alerts. So again, if you haven't made the jump yet to social media, or you haven't started following IPD and OCFA, we have those social media handles in just a couple pages for you. And then AM 1640. So, I've gotten a few chuckles on this before. It's kind of like AM radio. And is that really a good mode of notification? Well, it's not as good as Alert OC or WIA's. It's not like your radio's just going to pop on AM 1640 and start talking to you. But once we get a little bit into the incident and we have the time to pre-record a message, we will loop that on AM 1640, which is a Irvine operated low-band radio station that covers the entire city. So anyway, it's just another resource that can direct people to shelters and locations where they can seek safe refuge and when certain areas might be allowed to be repopulated. Do we have a question over here?
Yes, my name's Steve. I think I have a very important question that really, certainly everyone in Turtle Rock, specifically people off the world, and it has to do with Chaparral Park. It has to do with Chaparral Park.
Okay.
Of course, my wife and I, we walk in the evening when it's dark. And when we finish walking, we come into Sierra Oro, and we're always seeing people walking to go up on the hill. And of course, we have signs in the park over there that says the park is closed at, I think it does. But we see people walking at dusk and after dusk, and we have never, ever seen anyone in terms of fire department people or police department people stopping them. And of course, over the years, we've seen fire rockets shot out from there. We know that there have been little campfires up there. We know that people are smoking up there, and this goes on way late into the evening. And of course, we're always, the main concern, especially when the Santa Ana winds blow, and those people are still up there, even when Santa Ana, it's a disaster waiting to happen for all of Turtle Rock, and specifically for the people off of the Sierra Oro end, because we are directly below that area, and of course, the winds blow
Sure.
from the east.
Sir, so I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. So is your question directly related to what are we doing about folks that are going up and using bottle rockets or lighting fires? Is that kind of where you're going with the question?
What I'm saying is we haven't seen any enforcement of the fact that it's supposed to be closed at dusk time.
Got it. Okay. So what I'll do, come talk to me after. I'm gonna get you the contact information for our university lieutenant. Our city is broken up into 3 regions of policing, and your question will be directly related to him if it's a question about enforcement, because that's kind of outside my realm and outside of most of our realm here, but he'll be able to talk to you about that. Okay. All right. right, so that's kind of the overview on alert and warning. So going to the next slide, so know your zone. So I'm going to back up just for a moment on this one. So the wildfire evacuation plan that I referenced, again, we worked for a very long time on, really looked at all these different topics that we've seen come through in after action reports and other issues in other jurisdictions as it relates to response to wildfire evacuations. And so again, our question was, how can we do this different? How can we do this better? A big part of that was making the determination between all stakeholders on our evacuation committee, which included Irvine PD law enforcement, dispatch, public works, our transportation department, our disability services department, and how we transport those with access and functional needs out of threatened areas during evacuations, all the way to our folks in Communications Bureau, mutual aid, partners, other agencies. So we all came together and we said, you know what? This idea, this concept of pre-zoning out the city into pre-designated evacuation zones seems like it's going to solve a lot of issues. Not fix all the problems, not be a perfect scenario, but when you look at a lot of the problems in effect in some of these previous wildfire evacuations was communication getting misstrued between those making the decision to evacuate and those officers in the field evacuating south of this street, north of this street, west of this street, east of this street, only to have that change and grow to a bigger evacuation area 5 minutes later, right? And then maybe they didn't get the last message. All the way to when our public information office and alert and warning folks are pushing out information in the community, that information was getting misconstrued as well in terms of who was under a mandatory, who was under a voluntary, right? So we said, well, if we pre-zone out the city, we will not only be able to label and name all of those zones, we will be able to educate everybody in our city responders, as well as our mutual aid law enforcement personnel, provide them actual maps with labels of zones, and the community, so everybody knows, Turtle Rock 21 Charlie is Turtle Rock 21 Charlie. I don't have to tell you, well, that is everything east of this street and south of this street and north of this street, right? It's just known because you have access to a map, which all of you do. Again, cityofirvine.org/prepare. And again, we'll talk about that more. But the idea is that everybody from first responders to members of the public know how the city is zoned out, where it's kind of divided between this zone and that zone, where the primary evacuation routes are for each of those zones. And then that just kind of gets all of us more on the same page when we need to issue a lot of information, critical information, during a very stressful time, okay? So the picture on the left, again, if you go to cityofirvine.org/prepare, you can click on our what's called Know Your Zone campaign map. That's kind of a slogan that we ripped off from what they started doing. We got this idea from what they were doing in hurricane country in the southeast, which was, again, pre-identifying zones so that they can have this coordination better, and if possible, they can tier evacuations based upon the incident. So we kind of ripped off the slogan and said, hey, you know what, it's working, we're gonna go with Know Your Zone, make it available on the city website. And so this is what it looks like pre-disaster. And then on the right-hand side is a screenshot I took of my phone during Silverado when we sent out an emergency alert that came right to your smartphone. You clicked on a link, it popped up the map, again, the map and the website that had over 3 million hits, and showed mandatory evacuation, or what we call evacuation order versus the orange, which is evacuation warning, and drops that green pin dot that shows where you are in relation to the threatened areas and what you need to do. Whether, if it's a warning, you probably should go, you don't have to go yet. If it's an order, you need to leave now. So Again, we implemented this with our GIS team and our whole planning team ahead of time, and it worked really, really good. However, I said we learn from other jurisdictions' shortfalls and mistakes. We also learn from ours, and we take a close look at it. If you notice, you have everything above Irvine Boulevard, almost everything, evacuated. Well, pre-Silverado, we only designated the zones for everything south of the 405 because we knew that was a threat. And on the north end, we only came as far down as Irvine Boulevard because we thought we're never going to have to evacuate for wildfires south of Irvine Boulevard. Right? And we did. 133, vegetation, fire casting embers, lit the fire, pushed it right down to 133, so we did end up evacuating south of Irvine Boulevard. Again, there was time delays, there was misunderstanding, miscommunication, the EOC trying to draw those shape files and communicate that to the public on the fly, okay? So it almost proved our point. Thankfully, it was just a couple zone areas, but it proved our point how critical it was to do this work on the front end so we could do that with all of everything north of Irvine Boulevard. So what did we do after we learned this and we kind of did our after action report and hey, what went right? What did we miss the mark on? This was one of those things, and one of the after action items was, okay, we know it works. We're gonna go ahead and zone out the entire city and call them all hazard zones, not just wildfire hazard zones, because it might be a chemical spill, it might be a barricaded suspect or another critical police incident that we need to evacuate or shelter in place for. So, pre-Silverado, we had 40 zones between the north and the south end. Now that we've zoned out the entire city, there's 116 evacuation zones that have been thoroughly vetted by a number of eyes, discussed, debated, changed by our planning team that exists today. And again, if you go on our website, you'll see them all. That's interactive. You can zoom all the way into the individual structure. Okay, so moving on to high-low evacuation sirens. So again, during our after-action process for Silverado, it was how can we improve? What other tools are out there? And we felt pretty good about our alert warning plan. But one thing that an officer in the field that was up in Portola Springs thought of doing, very, very creative, very kind of in the moment thinking, was how can I help folks in the neighborhood I'm in that were having trouble understanding what was going on from a cultural standpoint and from a language barrier standpoint. He just so happened to be Chinese and speak Mandarin. He recorded a message in Mandarin on it was like an MP3 file or MP4 file, emailed it out to the department so all the other officers in that area would just play that on repeat with their speakerphone. So it was literally giving this message from the audible speaker from the police car as they're slowly driving through the neighborhood, and that helped significantly communicate that information. So when we identified that and really kind of praised that officer for what they did, we said, okay, so we're on to something here, coupled with a lesson learned and a new program up in Northern California. I think it's Napa, Sonora, and Sonoma counties that adopted this new tone. It's very different from any siren that you'll hear in California today. And it really resembles that of like a European siren, the high-low. Usually I try to imitate it with my voice, but it never goes over well, so I'm not gonna do it. But I can play it for you, and I don't think the audio is gonna be super loud, so let's all be very quiet. And I think we can hear it, and if not, again, it's on the website, and you'll be able to look that up when you get home. So let me play this, and then I'm going to wrap up the presentation, and we will certainly stand by as long as it takes to answer any questions that you have for us. So let me go ahead. I need to turn the AC off too for a minute. We'll see.
This is what a normal police siren sounds like, which is used for a variety of
responses to police activity. This is what is known as the high-low siren. The Irvine Police Department is implementing this new and unique sounding siren to alert residents of the need to evacuate during an emergency. California wildfires are spreading more quickly than ever before, so every second counts when evacuating. This high-low siren allows us to quickly alert entire neighborhoods that they are in immediate danger. In order to help our diverse community understand the purpose of the high-low siren, a recorded evacuation message translated into multiple languages will also be broadcast with the siren.
Please evacuate immediately.
If you hear this high-low siren in your neighborhood, you need to evacuate immediately. These new evacuation methods do not replace Alert OC, which is the city's mass notification system, but is another way to quickly warn our residents. Just remember, if you hear high-low, it's time to go.
That was our multimedia guy worked with us on this project, and actually, if I can go back here, I'll show you. So that please evacuate immediately is recorded in 8 different languages, our 8 most spoken languages in Irvine. It's all pre-recorded on every one of our police cars in the department. Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of work to do this, but again, it was yet again another tool that we could put in our tool belt and say, okay, if this doesn't work, we have this. If this doesn't work, we have this. And in reality, we're gonna say, let's do it all, right? We want to close the gap in terms of who is not getting the message. So you can share this with friends. If you have friends or family that speak other languages, these are the different languages that this public safety announcement has been translated into. So with that, just another slide, I think, and then we'll go to questions here. Yeah, and this is just the social media, what we call a handle slide. So these are the official handles for Irvine PD and OCFA on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then of course the plug for Access Irvine. I should let you know, Access Irvine is not, we just kind of have this up here for publicity purposes. We don't utilize that as like an emergency mode of communication. So, but Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, absolutely. So that concludes the presentation portion of tonight's Wildfire Town Hall event. I'm gonna go ahead and invite my partners up here so that, you know, whether your question is more suited for OCFA fire prevention or land management, vegetation management, or really from my shop, we can